delighted to say good morning to Lee Keegan. Lee, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Hey, Ger, how are things?
Yeah, good, thanks. How are you feeling at the moment? There's a big game on this weekend and you guys aren't involved. Is it difficult? Are you thinking about the game this weekend, or is it just, it's okay, you've made peace with it?
Yeah, make a certain amount of peace with it. Obviously, sure, listen, obviously you want to be involved. They're the big games that we've been associated with over the years. So obviously not being involved is tough. For me personally, I suppose I'm getting a bit of time at home with family and stuff like that. So that probably puts it into perspective for me personally. But obviously still bitterly disappointed not to be run out against Dublin now on Sunday in front of a big crowd. So, but I'll be watching with great interest. You know, I think any sports fan or guy would be crazy not to be tuned into two good games of the weekend. So I'll be definitely keeping a close eye and see how things are going to progress from there.
You're obviously mad to, like all Mayo people, to cheer on Galway so that somebody from Connacht finally wins an All-Ireland. Like, we've been cheering ye on for the last 10 years.
No rivalry at all, sure. I've got so many good wishes from Galway over the years, so I'm really looking forward to that game.
Really looking forward to the game. Is it interesting, wasn't it?
I know, I suppose because, again, we play Galway as well. You know, we will be watching with interest, and you know, Galway are going really well this year. So I mean, it will be a keen eye in that from our perspective as well, from a team in Connacht. So I won't say.
Do you hope we win?
I do actually. Yeah, you generally hope you do well on Saturday. To be honest, yeah. Like, I mean, it's always good to see Connacht win well represented. If it's not us, you'd like to see someone else do well. Although I say that with a heavy heart to a degree, but obviously I still like to see a team from Connacht do well. So.
Well, I'll ask you about the specifics of the matchups in a moment in that game, because there are some very interesting battles that need to be fought if there you're going to get to it. But just to finish on Mayo for a moment, a lot gets made of the fact that you're on the pitch afterwards with the Kerry jersey and the kids, and everybody's like, oh, there you go, that's it, that's the unofficial retirement photograph, that's him taking it all in one last time. I think maybe it's just a photograph of you taking the opportunity to have your kids on the pitch. I don't know. Maybe you can tell us.
Well, like, I mean, it's funny. Like, you know, I got a couple of texts and stuff as well. Like, you know, we're finished football in June, and I nearly have 7 months of reflection time. So I mean, to jump on the bandwagon like that nearly as quick as people do is probably a bit funny. Well, I find it funny anyway. Like, Joe, maybe I've just been written off as well a little bit, maybe age and all that stuff, but. Like, at the other side as well, like, my kids are sitting in the stand for an hour. They're under 2 years of age. Like, so you can imagine my poor wife and my in-laws trying to keep them entertained for that amount of time. So it's only just nice to get them out for a quick run around, especially that they came up to support me. So I mean, yeah, it's just a nice time for them. Like, they don't care about the result or what happened before. So any opportunity to get my daughters or kids on the pitch is nice. Even to see a couple other guys, you know, get their kids out there is just a nice moment. Obviously difficult for myself personally and my older family to see, probably result wise didn't go well, but for likes of the kids, it's just nice to have them out there, put things in perspective a bit more sometimes when you see that, and just having a bit of crack. So no, all good at the moment, Ger. Just, I suppose it was a nice moment. And also I had David Moore in jersey anyway, so I was swimming in a little bit. So not that David Moran's a fat guy or anything, but he's quite taller than me, so it looked like he dressed me for 3 minutes. Like
the inter-county player, though, Lee, at this stage of the year, like, championship's just over. It's obviously a difficult decision. Like, I am intrigued as to the pros and cons of going back for another year, particularly when it's such a commitment, like, and as you say, you've family, like, football is football at the end of the day, whereas at the same time you were in an All-Ireland final last year and it could be your one last chance, so there must be a lot in your mind as well in terms of weighing it up even in July.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm not going to sit here and lie, but of course I have to sit down my wife and my other bits of family and see what's best for me. I have to assess my own body, to be honest. I said there's a few of us in Mayo were on the go a lot of time. This is my 12th year at senior level, so I mean, I've a good bit of miles built up, and I still have to go into a club season with my club Westport as well. So there'll be a lot of hard reflection over the next few months to see where I'm at personally. But also, I suppose I'm at the age as well where I can make it work for myself as well. If it's a thing I want to do, absolutely. Like, for me anyway, I've enjoyed the last couple of years playing football. I play with a great bit of freedom. And I suppose I keep saying that it comes back probably to the family factor. I probably don't look at it as my sole purpose anymore. I look at it as something that I should be enjoying doing. We're all fit, healthy. I mean, we get to run out in Crow Park in front of 1,000 people to kick a ball about. So I mean, it is a bit of fun at the end of the day. So I don't take it as serious maybe as, not that I don't take it seriously, but I look at it from a different perspective from maybe when I was 24, 25, 26 to now that I'm 32, and there's bigger things in life that take priority. So I mean, I just sometimes go out there, like we train so hard. He said the commitment levels are huge, like, so why not just go out and play with a bit of freedom? You know, people always look back, you know, the way Jack McCaffrey's time playing, he was very, very happy-go-lucky, and I kind of just took that approach last year as myself, that this is something we love to do, so why are we taking it as a job? People will always talk and give opinions and all that, but from the group perspective, it's just going out and try and perform to the best of your ability and have a bit of fun with it. So, but in terms of that, yeah, I'll see how I go on with the Westport Club thing. Like, I suppose we've had a lot of exiles in the last, probably, it was like transfer deadline there on the Monday after we lost to Kerry. There was more lads signed up to go to Chicago than I ever seen in my lifetime. So, so again, I suppose the club championship's not going to start till September. So again, we have a massive gap again between now and club championship. So it's important now for myself personally, and I'm going to take a bit of downtime, just get my body right, just spend time at home, to be honest. I feel like I've been AWOL probably for a couple of months during the year, so just catch up with the kids and wife and do bits and pieces, go on holiday or just kick back and do nothing. So I'll enjoy the next couple of months, and then come club championship, hopefully I'll have a fresh impetus now to have a bit of fun again.
Post-COVID, with normal life hopefully returning, and fingers crossed that that's the way things stay, the split season hasn't been in properly yet. No, like, I don't think anybody has a full idea of what the implications are going to be, but from that perspective, that little downtime, an opportunity to refresh the batteries, might make it easier to go back next year. If you think, actually, if I do go back, it's not the 11-month commitment, it'll be over by June or July at the very latest. And I don't know, I just think that might feed into players. It might actually help elongate some of the careers of players, particularly at your stage.
Ger, don't write me off either.
Well, I'm trying to do the opposite.
You are done.
No, I do. I think I agree. No, and I've thought about that as well. There's pros and cons. For me, the pros are absolutely, again, age profile and years. And I think there is definitely a positive reaction to that for myself, anyway, personally, because I think, again, you're getting the best of both worlds. You're playing football at a really high level, you're getting your downtime, and then you go into a club season at a high level, and then again you want to get a couple more months. And I suppose I'm quite lucky that I had good flexibility, especially in James's time, and that I could take probably a couple extra trainings off or strip back the workload I was at, just so I'm more prepped then for league games or championship games, and get myself as much rest and recovery. So I was quite lucky from that aspect. But I suppose the negative is then if you're a team that played 2 games in championship this year and you're looking at maybe 10 months with no championship football, so you're going literally from league and then you're 2 championship games, you're out, and that's it. So that's probably harder for me personally. It's not as bad, because again, we got to the quarter-final. Leaving probably Croke Park would have a bit of an itch that we could have done a bit better, a bit more. But again, I'm knowing the group and what we have to come back as well. There's always going to be that reflection that we can do a bit better next year, because we have the squad. We have the squad depth. It's just cleared up injuries and probably get into a bit of a flow in terms of performance this year, which we probably never did. We never hit the heights that we wanted to hit. So that'll definitely leave an itch for some of the guys now down the stretch of this year, especially for next year come back in. And obviously with James stepping down, new manager coming in, new voice, again, that's another impetus for guys to look at and see how they're going to react to that as well. So there is pros with Ger, definitely, I agree. But probably the negatives then is teams need more games as well. And I suppose with next year there is that they're looking at that league basis as well, so you're going to get more games. So hopefully that will fulfil maybe that gap as well for county teams to get more games from the summer. So, but I do like the Tailteann Cup as well. I've actually been glued to it since we've been knocked out. Some great games. So I mean, if that's going well and that's promoted well as well, then there is going to be a really good summer of football next year. I don't think we've got to a flow of it this year yet. And like, I even hear people on about prices and tickets, and the game this Sunday's not so late. I think that all feeds into it as well, that it's just the championship hasn't hit the heights that we probably are used to so far. Yeah, and maybe that'll happen this weekend. One last thing, when James stepped away, did he do it straight away? Did you guys know straight away that was the end, or was it a bit of a surprise that it happened so quickly the day after? What was that? How did it all unfold? No, we didn't know straight away. I suppose we had a good chat after the game in the change room, and we just kind of reflected on the game itself, and just probably looked at quarter 3 in particularly, where we got back to a point to Kerry, and I kicked about between 4 wides and dropped short balls, and that was a killer for us then. And I suppose Kerry just picked us off in quarter 4, and the game was a bit of a dead rubber at that stage. So but nothing about retirements or anything. Like, I suppose, like everyone else, James just mentioned he just wanted when he said a bit of time to reflect. I didn't know it was going to be a day time to reflect, but you know, his term was up, so his 4 years were done. So probably in the back of a lot of our minds, James was probably done, and we never heard James talk about doing the next year either. So I mean, like the older guys, well, James has a big family at home, big job as well. So like that's taken up a lot of his time, been involved with us. So I mean, from family work wise, I'm sure he's under a lot of pressure from that side of things as well. So probably for James, he was happy with his 4 year term. Obviously, we're going to miss him terribly. Like, I love my time with James, both 4 years, the first phase, and then 4 year second phase. And I suppose James again brought us to 2 All-Ireland finals, the semi-final, league final. So positives, as the negatives, not winning them. But I mean, you have to look at the progression we've made under James in phase 2 in terms of who he's brought through and the personnel that he's brought in, and that comes from what we lost from phase 1 with James, like the Christy Barretts of this world, Keith Aiken's going to boil all these guys to bringing in the likes of Tommy Conroy, Ryan, Matt Horan. So I mean, Mayo is in a good spot in terms of personnel and football, but obviously to see James go is still very sad, because again, for me anyway, I've grown up with him probably through most of my Mayo career. So
you saw as well, like German. So we German O'Sullivan on yesterday, and you know, I guess their Cork reign sort of ended when you see the county board like kind of in its statement saying like they can hold their heads high. Then that obviously kind of means that some people will argue the otherwise. Like, have you sympathy for managers? Like, I'm thinking back to last year when you've like this personalised, almost, if not abuse, like extreme criticism of a manager and a particular player or particular players in an inter-county game that is still effectively like they're doing it as well as a day job, and you get this in national paper and so on, and the scrutiny and that's hard to be able to deal with. Like, you must have a lot of sympathy for him.
I do, but I suppose, like James always says, it's funny, like, Joe, when you're in the bubble, especially in Mayo football, like there is always going to be a lot of external factors in terms of talk and media and bits like that, and it does come with the territory to a degree. Now, I don't agree with it, but I think you have to accept it to some extent. But it's funny, when James always talks, it was always, to us anyway, it was always about being in that bubble. And I think James knew firsthand as well what's out there, what the word is. And particularly in a football mad country like Mayo, there's always going to be a diverse opinion, regardless if you're winning games or losing games. They're never going to be happy with certain aspects of what we do or what we don't do. So listen, that comes with the territory, very much so. But the great thing about James is, and I think I remember listening to Cullen Boyne there last week, he mentioned that it's funny, when we went away with games for weekends, it just felt like James had us just in a bubble to ourselves, and it didn't matter what went on outside that. So that was the key thing that we took away, James, is that he had us believing that weekend that we're going to win. Didn't matter if we're playing a Kerry, a Dublin, Tyrone. It was just a weekend that we got to spend together, knowing that we're going to a big match full of confidence, because James gives that belief. But I think the backlash probably from last year's final was quite tough, more so because, again, I suppose we've been in a lot of finals, but like there was a massive backlash, which I'm a weirdo. Sometimes I just tune out, to be honest. I don't care really what people say. I know that's probably a bit harsh, but you know, I don't get caught up in the whole muddle of, oh, you should have done this, you know, that. Tyrone beat us last year because they're better. We need to do certain things better to win it. We didn't, end the story. I'm very much a closed book, black and white. If you don't score more than your opponent, then you don't deserve to win. That's just the nature of sport. So for me, I totally switch off then after it. I just don't see the need to get caught up in all that. In all that, I don't know how to put it,
circus.
Negativity, because yeah, well, it can be a circus. It is, and if you do, like, if you get wrapped up in that, then you're going to spend weeks and months, and it just takes over. Like, and I have too much things to be doing, to be honest. Like, I mean, the best thing for us is we got straight back in the club, and it was great crack. I got to meet up with a couple of lads, play a few games, have a few beers after games, just enjoy a bit of normal life. And that, like, to get caught up in that circus, Jerry, is just, it's not worth it, to be honest. And I say this, like, it was a nationwide thing here. It just took over, like, and I mean, it's just too much important stuff in life to be getting caught up in just one game, and that's just the way I think about it.
I think it feels like Mayo suffer more than most other counties, because at some point, like, Dublin had the same circus for a period of time, but then they won their All-Irelands, and Kerry could easily, if they were to lose the game this weekend, you could see that circus making a comeback in Kerry. Like, the rumours around the Kerry football team in advance of the game with you guys in particular were off the charts. They're a bit more controlled this week for whatever reason. I don't know what the difference is. Maybe
it's Dublin. It's a Dublin game, because I think in Kerry they probably see us as maybe the game they wanted. Although we target that game to win, absolutely. But I think with the Dublin game, it's probably they're particularly supporters probably seen as a 50-50 kind of game, because again you have to look at the Kerry Dublin supposedly rivalry, and I can't call it rivalry yet because it was similar to us in Dublin. We hadn't beaten Dublin since 12. Kerry haven't beaten Dublin since 09 championship. So until they get that monkey at their back, they're going to be judged on that probably from the Dublin game aspect.
What defeat were you lowest after as a Mayo player so far?
17 All Ireland.
So like, why would is last year then that you're just at a different place in your life? Because last year you're kind of fairly heavy favourites actually, and like, I mean, there are a lot of regrets there. So what had changed in the 4 years?
I think the answer for me is just different perspective of life. It's funny what kids can do to you, like, as in, it's just your outlook of life it's just totally different. And I know it sounds bad, like, and I it's like, just to clarify, I was still very low after the game last year because obviously we want to win it, but my focus has to change quite fast going home. I don't have the 5 days of drinking to make up for it or whatever, or to sit in a dark corner and cry about it. I just have to be grown up about it and, get back to my day-to-day routine. Is the kids are important. My wife needs help at home. There's other things that I need to get back to work. Like, I can't feed my kids without money coming in. Like, so I mean, I have to do well at my job as well to make sure that there's an income, price of life, all this kind of stuff kicks in. Where in 17, I didn't have that, I suppose, the real life stuff going on, as in, like, I didn't have a house built, I didn't have kids, I wasn't married. I was with my partner, absolutely, but I mean, our focus was football, and we could go and enjoy it after. But I just think we're in a different place then, where, as I mentioned earlier, my probably more of my focus was switched to football at that time, where now it takes a backward step now, and the kids and all that, the house take more priority. So that's probably the difference between 17 then to last year. But no defeat gets any easier after All Ireland. It is very difficult. You see the group, and as disappointed and inconsolable as they are, but I suppose I've been around long enough now to help those guys, the younger guys. So I knew what was coming once the final whistle went. So for me to kind of, I suppose, react the way I was in 17 when I was down the ground crying versus last year, where you just have to accept it. Sometimes the reality of life is you don't get that Cinderella story. You have to be realistic about it. And Tyrone were just better than us last year, and I know that's very hard to hear, but they were, and they just did more better stuff than us on the day. Where in 17, I just thought we put in a brilliant game plan, did nearly everything right, bar kick that final score. So it's just the little inches, the little nuggets that get you over the line, and unfortunately we just haven't got there yet. I still believe fully that they will get there. There's no issue with that, but that's the difference between probably 17. Where
they or we know it's got to be we.
We. Sorry. Yeah. We. I meant we.
You still have a chance next year. Like Mayo are not far off. People will just write them off. You're not actually far off in an open championship. So it's got to be we. I think for you anyway.
Sorry, I meant we. Apologies, I corrected myself. It's just I don't want the perception out there. So, well, like that's
he said they.
Apologies, I meant we, me included. But like the perception out there is like, like this, our age profile is very good. Like, there's only a few of us that are in our 30s. Like, so I mean, the profile is quite good age-wise in Mayo, and then the talent come through is very good. Like, even our minors and all our finalists this Friday, you have another 4 or 5 guys that could accelerate from that time. The next 2 or 3 years to be brought up to the group. You have the 20s that were in a Connacht finalist here, granted didn't win, but again, we have guys that are doing their stuff underage, so that's only boding well for what we need in the future. So, and then you have the likes of Tommy injured this year, Ryan didn't get enough game time championship, guys just didn't get a run of form. I mean, there is ample opportunities for us there to progress again next year, granted that we just get a performance a bit higher, and especially from the before league final, it was very much stop-start because we had a lot of injuries going on. Not that it's an excuse, there's no excuse for that, but I mean, it was very hard to get into a flow of getting a team picked week in, week out, because we're unsure if Kai was going to be available from injury or what his situation was. So I don't think, I do agree with you, I don't think we're far away at all, just getting that extra % or two right next year.
The games this weekend, to get your thoughts on that briefly, right? The Star, I think, reported that there's a hairline fracture issue. We don't know which part of his body for Conor Callahan. But if that's the case, and if he's missing, that's big enough to swing this game back in Kerry's favour. Or is it? Is he that important to Dublin at the moment, do you think?
I believe he is, absolutely. I think the difference in Dublin's performance, I don't even look at Dublin's league performance. I don't think that that even comes into play. I just think if you look at, I know, and again, Leinster, it can be a bit of a dead rubber as well, but if you look at the difference the way Dublin played with Con playing and James McCarthy, they're different beasts altogether. So I do think it's a huge factor going into Sunday's game. And no more than David Clifford playing Sunday. I know he got all clear today. So you're talking about guys of that quality that are going to bring probably the extra percent or two that I was mentioned earlier to get them over the line. So it probably does give Kerry the upper hand. But the only thing is, Dublin know how to be Kerry, and they've done it for so long. So again, if Con is playing or not, they'll prep for that well. I think with Con playing for Dublin, they were far more direct in what they were doing. Then they play against Cork, I felt they went back to a little bit of default. It probably, again, not to mention, but their league form, they were kind of playing around the edges a little bit. But with Con there, he gives them a huge focal point. And especially, I think as well, the way Tyke Morley sets up for Kerry, he does drop back a lot. So if Con plays, that nearly occupies two lads, and it gives the likes of Kieran Kilkenny or some of these guys a bit more free time on the ball.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about here. One of these injuries, because the season is so condensed and it's knockout at the weekend, one of these injuries can actually decide the destination of the title this year. Speaking of Dublin, I think Mossy Quinn did the last game for us here, and in the aftermath of it, he was saying that, in his opinion, you're now going down as the greatest Mayo footballer of all time. You know, we were saying earlier, Irish people are not great at taking compliments, so we're going to embarrass you here with this. But is something like that a motivation for you to like keep going and like continue to drive standards, that you're in that bracket and you're in that conversation?
Thanks, Mossy. I suppose it's like the Irish culture. We don't do compliments very well. Well, it's good to hear that be in that conversation. I suppose that the one word I did take is standards, and I suppose that was probably my biggest mindset when I first came into Mayo, was that I felt that our standards weren't there. And I was quite young when this happened, but like I felt the culture within Mayo was very much, you know, we might get to a final every so often, and that's acceptable, or we might challenge 4 or 5 years at a time and go away for 4 or 5 years. And when I first came in, my mindset was just bring an aggression, bring a edge, and just bring kind of an attitude that we're going to win at all costs type thing. And I was lucky that I wasn't the only one that came through with that group. There was a core group that came through at the same time, and we're all nearly on the same page. So I think the standard thing, I love being associated to a degree, because I think if you're setting standards, guys that come from years after us follow that standard. So to be in that kind of conversation bracket, I love more so than probably even calling the greatest of whatever it is, to be honest. I think if once I got my standards right and my mindset right for the group going forward, and they respect that, and I think they do, I think that's a greater appreciation to myself personally than anything else.
Yeah, I've no doubt whatever happens next, the phone call will be made fairly early on to try and get you on board for next season, and it sounds like you're relatively open to that, to be honest, at this stage. So last question for you here. The Tailteann Cup, you said you've been glued to it. What's going to happen in the final? Because this is one of those very close 50-50 games, hard to call.
Yeah, I suppose the thing I was kind of laughing at was the Sligo Cavan game, in particular semi-final, is that, you know, and Cavan are rightly massive favourites, but I love the way, and I know Tony McEntee well, obviously been involved. I think that underdog type thing suits him very well, and I think it showed a lot of vulnerabilities in Cavan's game plan. And then obviously the flip side then is, I think Westmeath are hugely impressive against Offaly, although Offaly be very disappointed with themselves. I know I was very intrigued at how Ronan O'Toole played the last day. Excuse me, I played against him in a league game last year, and again, he was very impressive in that game. So I think it's going to be a really intriguing game. I still think Cavan, probably based on where they've come from and the group of players they probably have enough experience to get over the line. The way Gareth McKernan is playing, and this team, I don't know, just with other teams are very hard to break down in Croke Park. So I do have a feeling Cavan will probably nip them. I have to say that because I grew up in Cavan as well. So I don't want to be vilified totally. But I honestly been glued to. I think the game's been cracking, to be honest. I think it's the only thing I'd love to see with the Tailteann Cup is, instead of provincial or regional draws, I'd just love to see an open draw. I think some of the games you get would be absolutely insanely good. Like I didn't like the regional draws. I just think it threw up too many similar teams playing each other in provincial. I think if you had an open draw, you'd be looking at teams that have never come across each other, playing totally different styles and brands of football. I think you get some absolute crackers games. So I think that would be definitely a helpful addition to the Tailteann Cup next year. But I think the final's going to be really good on Saturday, and I love the way I think it does need more highlighting and promotional avenues as well. I think like we're looking at some of the best players in the country playing this in these games. So I think it's really important we get the right information to the Tailteann Cup, but it also give more appeal to the people as well. And I hope a good few people go to the game as hard to see what's on show and what's on offer. Because it's as big a game as the semi-finals, essentially, because the prize is they're back in Sam Maguire next year. So I mean that's a huge motivation for those two teams.
100%. Lee, enjoy whatever's next, and thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thanks guys, appreciate it.